does one go from being an average competitor to someone who stands out from all the competition? How does one break through the plateau of the average person and excel in their work? That's a great question, and to answer, I'll turn to a book I've read recently called So Good They Can't Ignore You: What Skills Trump Passion in the Search for Work You Love. In this video, I will only be covering a small section of this book, but like all of Cal Newport's other books, I strongly recommend you to read the whole book, which I will link down below. Before we jump into this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel since only less than half of you who watch my videos are subscribed. Anyway, let's get into the video. So the answer that I found to that question is practice, but to be more specific, a type of practice called deliberate practice. To understand this more, I'll give you a quick example. Imagine two intermediately skilled pianists. The first pianist, Cindy, practices for 40 hours a day. The first pianist, Cindy, practices for 2 hours a day, and the other, Sydney, for 2 hours as well. During these 2 hours, the first pianist will skim through all of her repertoire and play them all at once, all while occasionally taking breaks and talking with friends. The second pianist will focus on one piece, breaking it down, smoothing out tougher spots, and paying close attention to the details. After a year of practice, who do you think will be better at the piano? That's right, Sydney. And why? Enter deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is not just any practice, it's a harder practice. And deliberate practice is the type of practice that forces you to do newer things or do harder things. Deliberate practice is the type of practice that melts your brain after an hour and forces you to take a break. But why is deliberate practice so helpful? The secret lies within the fact that you're actually pulling yourself out of your comfort zone. You've heard of the saying, work smart, not hard, correct? Well, deliberate practice pulls almost directly from that saying. Instead of mindless repetitions of scales and scanning through pieces with no active effort to improve, the second pianist intentionally broke down the piece, found her weaknesses, and improved upon them. So how can one do deliberate practice? Oh, let's turn back to my first example. The first thing that our second pianist did was break down the piece into smaller parts. Therein lies the first step. Break the overall process that you're practicing down into smaller parts. This can look different for different skills. For example, if you want to learn how to write a blog post, maybe you'll break down the process of writing the blog. If you want to learn how to program, maybe you'll break it down into different sections of your code. If you want to learn to draw, maybe you'll break it down into drawing the first draft, adding details, and the final sketch. If you want to learn how to do a handstand, maybe you'll break it down into being able to bounce against a wall, and then being able to bounce with a spotter, and then maybe not. After breaking the piece down into separate parts, the second pianist then looked for her weaknesses, smoothing out her rougher parts. That's the second step in what we need to do. Look for our weaknesses. For example, if you're that blog writer, maybe your weakness is in your research. If you're a programmer, maybe your weakness is in messing up syntax. If you're an artist, maybe your weakness is in proportions. After identifying your weaknesses, your next step is to test out different strategies and see how you can eliminate that weakness. Other than the past 3 steps that I've mentioned, another important thing that you need to do deliberate practice is feedback. Without feedback, you'll be practicing without knowing if you're improving or not. At this point, you'll either keep doing the wrong thing and erode your past improvements, or just lose interest altogether. If you can get feedback on the mistakes you made, you should assess what went wrong and how you can prevent that mistake in the future. In this step, your best bet is to get a coach, but if you don't have the resources to get one, there's still another viable option. For example, if you're a blogger, you could post your blog posts online and get feedback through your readers. If you are a programmer,
it's even simpler. You just run your code and does it work or not. If you're an artist, share your work with your friends and family and maybe post it online. Another thing you'll want to apply is selective focus. Like I mentioned before, deliberate practice, if done correctly, is extremely mind-melting and cognitively exhausting. You can't do hours and hours of deliberate practice and still have the practice be effective. So instead, whittle down what you want to do deliberate practice with to only a few skills. After all, your cognitive energy is a limited resource. Another good example of deliberate practice that comes to mind is Ben Franklin. As a teenager, he was told that his writing was in fact second class, and he took this feedback seriously and set out to improve his writing. So what he did was he found these large books of prose that he aspired to write and took each of the essays and broke them down by sentences, trying to find out what each of the sentences mean. After a few days, he would then reconstruct the essay by memory and then compare it to the original. This story screams deliberate practice. He broke the essays down into sentences, found his weaknesses when reviewing his version of the essay, and he got feedback when he compared his version to the original, and turned his weaknesses into strengths.
Another example of deliberate practice that I didn't even know that I was doing was programming. Traditionally, programming is really easy to do deliberate practice with. I know that because every time when I step back from my computer, my brain is usually fried. Compiling the program gives you instant feedback, and to make a program work, you have to navigate your weaknesses. The computer never cares what you're good and bad at. A really accurate quote I've heard before is, "The fact that the computer does exactly what we tell it is a curse and a blessing."
So thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna go stretch now. And you can click on one of the videos on the end screen and maybe leave a like. That tells the YouTube algorithm that you like my videos, and it will push it out to more people so I can have a larger impact on this platform. And anyways, maybe if you're not going to click on the video, maybe, just maybe, you could turn off your tablet, you could turn off your phone, you could turn off your computer and go do some work. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay productive.